So everything that we've done so far has been fluff. There wasn't even really maths, but now we get to the maths that you do in shares. If I break it down to it, all the maths that you do in shares is timesing and adding things. And that's why a lot of people think, oh, when they drop down to general, it's going to be easier. No, it's hard in a different way because you can't just do that. Shares exist in real life. There's context, there's meaning behind what you're doing rather than just differentiating and finding the slope of a line. That's why there's all these other notes. Why? Because they explain what shares are and what the calculations mean. So there's more fluff in general maths, but the maths is easier. In methods and spec, the maths is crazy, but there's not much context to it. So it's different in different ways. Guys that did 11 general last year, you'll be advantaged because you did this at the end of last year. It'll be a repeat. Guys that did methods, you'll be advantaged for next topic unless you were just terrible at methods and you won't have an advantage anyway. So buying shares. It is important to know how much you're going to pay to buy a number of shares in a company because you are not just buying the shares. Calculations must be performed because you're not just paying for each share. You have to pay brokerage and GST as well. So what does this mean? There's three parts to any buying shares calculation. The first part is called the consideration. This is the total value of all the shares you're purchasing. So if there's something to go on your cheat sheet, you would write that the consideration is equal to the number of shares times by the buying price. So for a quick example, if I wanted to buy 10 shares for $10 each, 10 times 10, my consideration would be $100. That seems pretty simple. But that's not the only thing that you have to pay. Can you get this first block, please? Consideration is number of shares times by the buying price. Okay, second part of buying shares is the idea of brokerage. Shares aren't on a shelf at Woolworths. They're in a computer somewhere. You need to pay someone to buy them for you. Or these days, you have an app to do it. So the app I use is called Self-Wealth. There's Superhero, etc. You need to pay someone else to buy the shares for you. This person or organization is paid a fee called the brokerage. You have to pay someone to buy shares for you. The brokerage can either be a percentage of the consideration or it's a straight flat fee. So you pay them like just $10 or something, okay? So there's two different ways the brokerage might be calculated. You need both. If brokerage is as a percentage, then the brokerage rate as a decimal times by the consideration. If it's a flat fee, then the brokerage as a flat fee is literally just the flat fee. Couple of moments. Can you get those two boxes there? All right, last of the three elements is the idea of GST. In Australia, we have something called goods and services tax. They apply that tax to certain goods and services. What is the broker doing? When you pay broker, they're providing you a service to buy the shares for you. So the government is going to take 10% of whatever that service cost. So currently in Australia, GST is 10%. So how do I work out GST? 0.1%, 0.1, which is 10% as a decimal, and then I times it by the brokerage. Please don't make the mistake. I've had people times it by the consideration. The consideration wasn't a service. The brokerage was. The government takes 10% of the brokerage. And so the last thing you need to get before we do examples is, so the overall cost of buying a bunch of shares is going to be the sum of the consideration, the brokerage, and the GST. So if I wanted to find the total cost of buying shares, it's consideration plus brokerage plus GST. There's your writing time. If you game, have a go at this example with what you've got so far. I'll give you a minute or so. All right, let's do it together. 3 parts to a buying shares calculation. What was the first one? It started with a C. Consideration. So you write cons. What is the consideration? It's the number of shares times by the price per share. There were 1,500 Telstra shares being bought at $5.40 each. So your consideration is going to be 1,500 times by 5.4. That is going to equal a big number. 1500 times by $5.40, 8,100. So what is happening here? You are trying to buy $8,100 worth of Telstra shares. But that's not all you're going to pay. You need to pay someone to do it for you. What was that fee called? Started with a B. Brokerage, Brock. What is the kind of brokerage here? Is it percent or is it just a straight dollar amount? Percent. So what would 2% be as a decimal? Is it 0.2 or is it 0.02? 0.02. Because 0.2 would be 20%. 0.02 times by the consideration, which is $8,100. So the broker, whoever it is, 0.02, they're going to get 2% of 8,100. So they're going to get paid 162. And then GST is the 10% government cut of the service provided. What was the service provided? The brokerage, which was $162. So 0.1 times 162 is $16.20. So you can use your calculator. There is no longer any test that requires no notes, no calculator. You'll always have a calculator these days. 0, 2, 6, 7, 8, 6, 7, 2. That's why you do the maths. I wanted to buy $8,100 worth of shares, but how much will it actually cost me? $8,278.20. This 2% brokerage is realistic for the olden days, right? But when you use an app, the brokerage is like 0.01%. It's very little because it's not some guy. It's literally app and programming doing the brokerage for you. Can you get this example down, please? And we'll do a second one with a flat fee. There is a reason also why I show you the working out like this. It's not a waste of my time. Because if all you did was write the answer, right, and it was wrong, how many marks out of 5 would you get if your answer is the only thing that you wrote and was completely wrong? 0. You'd get 0. If you stuffed up and you found 10% of the consideration, you still found 10% of something, but you found 10% of the wrong thing. So you might get 4 out of 5. What would you rather? So when people tell me, oh, should I show the working out? Why would I be wasting my time showing you the working out if I didn't want to do it? Okay? All right, you tell me what the working out is going to look like for this one. Cons. What would I times? Yes?
1,200 times 4.8.
Equals?
That equals 2,400.
$2,400. Brokerage. Now if I read the question, $30 flat fee. Do I need to do any maths to work out what $30 is? No. So you just have 30 there. 30. And then GST, you're adding that. 0.1 of 30 is going to be $3. Add them vertically. So that, the Qantas is going to cost me $2,433 to buy $2,400 worth of Qantas shares. I'm going to stop the recording there. What I'd like you to do to start off with, can you work 40 minutes? Exercise 4C, only questions 1, 5 and 7.